Vienna, 1931. A hail of bullets shatters the night as Europe's most hunted monarch steps from the opera unharmed again. By then, Ahmet Zogu was already legendary for escaping death in parliament, at home, and in exile. But why did survival cost King Zog everything? His country, his legacy, even his place in history. The truth behind his unkillable reign begins with the gunfire. Friday night, the 20th of February, 1931. Outside the Vienna State Opera, the city is alive with music and late cafe crowds. Ahmet Zogu, King of Albania, steps out with his entourage. His chief bodyguard, Major Lech Topolaj, is at his side, and Foreign Minister Ekrem Bey Libohova is just behind. The car waits at the curb, engine running. As Zog moves to enter, two men break from the shadows and unleash a volley of pistol shots at point-blank range. Glass shatters, bullets ricochet off iron shutters and marble pillars. Topolaj collapses instantly, struck fatally while shielding the king. Libohova is hit, blood soaking his coat. Witnesses later say Zog drew his own revolver and fired back from the car, emptying the cylinder in the direction of the attackers. Panic erupts. Opera patrons scatter, some ducking behind columns, others frozen as the chaos spills into the street. One gunman, Aziz Kami, bolts down Opengasser, revolver still in hand. Taxi driver Matthias Vorsitz gives chase, tackling him near a stage door as more shots ring out. The second, Indok Jaloshi, is seized by bystanders and beaten before police drag him away. Within minutes, the king is rushed under guard to the Hotel Imperial, unharmed but with his suit flecked in blood not his own. The attackers are arrested, their motives left to speculation and rumour. In the aftermath, Vienna's headlines scream of a royal ambush. Yet the question lingers: who wanted Zog dead so badly, and why did he survive when others fell? On the morning of the 23rd of February 1924, the Albanian parliament in Tirana erupted in gunfire. Ahmet Zogu, then Prime Minister and Minister of the Interior, was making his way through the corridors when Bekir Valteri, a political opponent from the same region, raised a pistol and fired at close range. Two shots struck Zogu, tearing into his hand and hip. Witnesses described a stunned silence, then panic as guards rushed forward and Valteri fled, barricading himself in a bathroom before being arrested. Blood stained the marble floors of the assembly. In the hours that followed, rumours swirled through the capital. Was this the end of Zogu's rule, or the beginning of something far more ruthless? Zogu survived, but the wounds ran deeper than flesh. Within 48 hours, he resigned his post as Prime Minister, saying he needed to calm a nation teetering on chaos. The attack did not end his ambitions, it hardened them. Forced into exile later that year by a revolutionary government, Zogu watched as Albania slid toward anarchy. When he returned, backed by foreign arms, he brought with him a new understanding. Survival in Albanian politics required more than courage. It demanded vigilance, loyal guards, and an acceptance that violence could spill into the heart of power at any moment. The lesson of that February morning would shape every step he took from then on. What does a crown cost? In August 1928, the answer arrived in the form of a vote. The Albanian Constitutional Assembly gathered in Tirana and passed a motion that ended the republic and restored the monarchy. On September 1st, Ahmet Zogu became King Zog I, the first and only modern king of Albania. The coronation was formal, but the foundation beneath the throne was anything but secure. Years of violence had left the country battered and divided. Zog's rise from clan chieftain to president and now to king was built on a careful blend of force, negotiation, and foreign backing. Behind the scenes, the real power broker was not the assembly, but Rome. Since 1925, Italian credits had poured into Albania, first as emergency loans and then as sweeping treaties. These agreements gave Italian advisors control over the army, the economy, and even the police. The documents signed in Tirana and Rome bound Albania's future to Mussolini's ambitions. For Zog, the Italian money bought time and authority, but every signature deepened his dependence. The new monarchy stood tall in ceremony, but its roots were tangled in foreign debt and diplomatic promises. As Zog accepted the crown, he also accepted a bargain: sovereignty traded for survival. The question was how long this balance could last before the cost became too high. 55. That's the number that haunts the legend of King Zog. The claim appeared in headlines from London to Belgrade, more than 50 assassination attempts. Some said it was 55, others called him the most hunted monarch in Europe. The press turned Zog's survival into a spectacle, tallying each rumoured plot as proof of his unnatural luck. But behind the headlines, the record thins. Archives offer only a handful of confirmed attacks: a gunman in the Albanian parliament and a hail of bullets outside the Vienna State Opera. Security files mention bomb plots and pistol ambushes, but most details vanish into rumour and the fog of Balkan politics. Still, the myth grew. Every reported threat, real or imagined, became another notch in the count. Was it a careful tally or folklore spun by nervous aides and eager journalists? In the absence of hard numbers, the press filled the gap, turning Zog's daily routines into rituals of survival. Newspaper columns speculated about the king's nerves, his guards, his endless cigarettes. The more the attempts were repeated, the more they seemed to multiply. 55 or folklore. The line between fact and legend blurred, but one thing remained: Zog's reputation as the king who refused to die, even as the world kept trying. What does a cigarette do for a hunted king? For Zog, it was more than habit. It was armor. In the years after bullets found him in Parliament and after gunmen waited outside the Vienna Opera, the rituals of survival became unyielding. Zog was rarely seen without a cigarette between his fingers, the air around him thick with smoke. Foreign diplomats described meetings clouded with tobacco, the king chain-lighting one cigarette from the last, nerves masked behind a steady exhale. By the early 1930s, European newspapers reported that Zog had come to Vienna seeking treatment for neurosis and nicotine poisoning, a polite way of saying his nerves and his cigarette habit were both running hot. Security routines hardened alongside these private rituals. Each morning, palace guards rehearsed their formations with military precision. Motorcades followed strict routes, never twice in a row, and no schedule was ever published in advance. Foreign visitors were met by layers of armed escorts, their movements watched from the moment they crossed the border. Even inside the royal residence, loyalists patrolled the corridors, eyes trained for anything out of place. Memoirs from diplomats and aides recall a court where unpredictability was the enemy, and routine itself became a shield. In this world, every cigarette and every guard was a small act of defiance, a way to push back against the memory of gunshots and the knowledge that tomorrow might bring more. On the morning of April the 7th, 1939, the Italian Navy landed on Albania's coast. Columns of troops moved quickly toward Tirana as aircraft roared overhead, dropping leaflets and bombs in equal measure. Inside the royal palace, Zog faced the reality that no number of guards or cigarettes could stop what was coming. His newborn son, Lika, just 2 days old, was bundled with Queen Geraldine and placed in a waiting car. The convoy pulled away from the capital, winding through mountain passes and narrow roads, hoping to outrun the advancing Italian forces. By April 9th, 1939, Zog's party reached the Yugoslav border, crossing under the watchful eyes of foreign police. From there, the escape stretched across borders and languages, through Yugoslavia by train, into Greece, then on to Egypt, and eventually Western Europe. In Tirana, Italian soldiers raised their flag. Parliament offered the Albanian crown to Victor Emmanuel III. Zog's regime, built on vigilance and ritual, collapsed in a matter of days. For a king who had survived gunmen and coups, this defeat came not from a bullet, but from armies and treaties. In exile, Zog became a king without a country, living in hotels and rented villas, his court reduced to a handful of loyalists. When communists seized power in Albania after World War II, they erased Zog's story from textbooks and newsreels. Official histories described him as a traitor and a puppet, if they mentioned him at all. For decades, the man once known as Unkillable faded from public memory, his name spoken only in whispers, his image sealed in archives. What happens when survival outlives a throne? For Zog, the answer was silence. Today, power and survival still demand their own rituals, and erasure remains a weapon. As history is rewritten in real time across borders, the fate of Zogwin warns, what's forgotten isn't lost. It waits, reshaping the shadows behind every leader's myth. What would you remember or erase?